Race. It is not a black and white concept. In fact, it's very gray. Race is a complex term that holds much power in our society. Social scientists and biologists agree that race is a social construct. Race is socialized. It is learned, created by culture and not science. There is no genetic basis to race. Different societies throughout the world have their own perceptions of what constitutes a racial group. Skin color, as a marker of race, is not necessarily universal. Racial groups would change if the racial classification changed, like if we decided to classify races based on the appearance of the sickle cell gene, lactase gene, or on fingerprints.
However, in the United States, racial categories have been divided by phenotype. A race is a group of people who have been singled out as inferior or superior based on their physical characteristics, like skin color, hair texture, and eye shape. This classification based on appearances can be very misleading. The eyes can only see so much. A quick glance at a friend who may appear to be of one race may actually identify with another. Our classifications can lead to identity crisis when society sees someone in a way in which they do not agree. Our differences tend to naturalize our ideas of the existence of a genetic basis for race. There is no genetic basis. But throughout history, scientists have been trying to find such bases, like the eugenics movement. Evidence from the analysis of genetics, DNA, indicates that most physical variation, about 94%, lies within so-called racial groups. In other words, there is greater variation within racial groups than between them. Throughout history, whenever different groups have come into contact, they have interbred. Therefore, there is no such thing as racial purity.
Today, scholars argue that race in the United States of America was a social mechanism invented during the 18th century to refer to those populations in colonial America, the English and other European settlers, the conquered Indians, and the Africans brought in to provide slave labor. Race as an ideology about human differences was subsequently spread to other areas of the world. It became a strategy for dividing, ranking, and controlling colonized people used by the colonial powers everywhere. In the 19th century, Europeans ranked one another to justify social, economic, and political inequalities. The idea of race was to assign groups to low statuses or to privilege, power, and wealth. In essence, race is a pragmatic tool used to designate power and a way of establishing hierarchy. Racial groups are not consequences of their biological inheritance, but products of historical and contemporary social, economic, educational, and political circumstances.
Race is a social construct, and so not necessarily real. But it seems very real to the people who must face the negative consequences of racial stereotypes and discrimination. Overt and subtle racism can be seen from our neighbors next door to in our media. Racial categories have the ability to influence people's lives in areas such as economic potential, housing and neighborhoods, education, and life expectancy. United States policies and practices perpetuate this idea of race with the history of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, voting restrictions, school tracking, racial profiling, and limited opportunities. We are all human. There is no subspecies of human. There is no racial superiority or inferiority. It is up to future generations to combat the race issue in better ways than our forefathers. Holistic policies that seek to help individuals and seek to correct our social structure and societal institutions will help with providing equal opportunity for all people in the future. You and me, we aren't so different. It's time to put aside the color wheel, put aside our phobias of the other, and look at each other without judgment.